Have you ever
You're
wondered what you
eating.
would do
You're
if you saw a
actually
child
eating.
getting weaker every single day,
I'm so
and everyone
happy.
around pretended not to notice? In a mansion filled with chandeliers and secrets, one humble nanny noticed what no one else dared to see, and her courage changed everything. Before we go on, allow me to wish you peace and good health. Tell me, from which country and at what time are you watching this story? The first chill of autumn had arrived in Ash Grove, curling through the narrow streets and shaking loose the first red leaves from the maples. Marianne Cole pulled her cardigan tighter as she made her way up the hill toward the Hale estate. The town below stirred gently awake. Someone flipped the sign on the cafe window from closed to open. A bell chimed at the post office, and a pickup truck rumbled past with the bed piled high in pumpkins. Marianne had walked this same road for 12 years, her steps slow but steady, her thoughts drifting between the quiet present and a past she no longer spoke of. Folks around town knew her as the nanny up the hill, the woman who hummed lullabies even when she thought no one was listening. At 56, she carried her years with a soft grace, the kind that made people lower their voices when she entered a room. She stopped at Ash Grove Cafe for her morning coffee, and Linda, the waitress, poured it before Marianne even asked. "Still taking it with a splash of cream, hon?" Marianne smiled. "If you change it after all these years, I might just forget how to start my day." Linda leaned on the counter. "You working through the weekend again?" "Seems that way," Marianne said, slipping $1 under her saucer. "Little Eli's been restless lately. Change of season, maybe." Linda's expression softened. "That boy adores you, Marianne. Some kids are just wired to know who loves them right." Outside, the air smelled of damp leaves and distant wood smoke. The Hale mansion sat on a rise at the edge of the woods, modern glass and stone, that gleamed coldly even in the Sunday. As Marianne reached the front steps, the door opened before she could knock. "Morning, Mrs. Cole." The housekeeper, a young man named Travis, greeted her politely, already burdened with shopping bags. "Mr. Hale left early. Mrs. Hale's in the garden." Marianne nodded and stepped inside. The marble floors caught her reflection, making her feel small in all that brightness. She hung her sweater by the kitchen door and went straight to the nursery. Eli Hale sat on the rug, surrounded by wooden trains. The little boy looked up, and his whole face lit with recognition. "Mimi!" The name still pierced her heart in the gentlest way. It was close enough to Mommy to sting, but sweet enough to make her smile. "Good morning, my love," she whispered, kneeling down to him. "Did you sleep well?" He nodded, though his cheeks were paler than they should have been. She brushed a strand of blonde hair from his forehead and noticed the faint dark circles under his eyes. "You need some sunshine today," she murmured. "We'll take a walk after breakfast." From behind came a voice smooth as glass. "Please make sure he wears a hat," said Vanessa Hale, gliding into the room in a cream silk robe. Her beauty was the kind that photographs loved, every hair in place, every smile calculated. "The pediatrician says direct sunlight can trigger fatigue." Marianne stood, quietly respectful. "Of course, Mrs. Hale. I'll be careful." Vanessa's eyes flicked toward the half-empty bottle of formula on the table. "I prefer fresh bottles each time," she said. "If he doesn't finish one, pour it out. We can't risk contamination." "Yes, ma'am." Gregory Hale appeared briefly in the doorway, phone in hand, jacket slung over his arm. "Morning, Marianne. Thank you for staying late yesterday. Big presentation today. I'll be gone till late." Eli's eyes followed his father with silent hope, but Gregory's attention had already drifted back to his screen. "Daddy," the boy murmured, barely audible. Gregory paused, forcing a smile. "I'll be back soon, champ." He ruffled Eli's hair and left. The sound of the car engine faded down the driveway, leaving behind the faint perfume of Vanessa's roses and an uneasy quiet. Marianne knelt again, pretending to arrange toys so Eli wouldn't see her sadness. "He loves you," she said softly, though she wasn't sure who she was trying to convince. Later that morning, Vanessa descended to the kitchen, dressed as if for a magazine shoot, though she had nowhere to go. "Remember, Mrs. Cole," she said, stirring her tea. "Eli's milk must be exactly the way I prepare it. I've written the instructions on the fridge." Marianne nodded. The list was indeed there, printed in elegant cursive, every measurement underlined twice. She read it, memorized it, but couldn't shake the feeling that something in this house was too precise, too rehearsed, like a photograph touched up until all the warmth was gone. After breakfast, she carried Eli outside. The air was sharp with the scent of pine. A flock of geese passed overhead, and Eli pointed, whispering, "Birds." "Yes, darling," Marianne said. "They're heading south, like they do every year." He rested his head on her shoulder. His small heart beat steady against hers. And for a moment the years between her and the daughter she lost blurred into nothing. She hummed softly, the same lullaby that once filled another nursery long ago. By noon, the sky over Ash Grove had turned a deeper blue, brushed with drifting clouds. The Hale property stretched wide, bordered by sugar maples that had begun to shed their color. From the porch, Marianne could see the town far below the diner sign blinking, the church steeple gleaming in the sunlight. It was a view most people would envy, yet she always felt a strange loneliness standing here. Beauty, she'd learned, could be cold. Inside, the house was quiet except for the rhythmic click of Vanessa's heels. She was giving orders to the gardener about trimming rose bushes, her voice cutting through the still air. Marianne returned to the kitchen to wash Eli's bottle, the faint smell of formula clinging to her hands. The baby monitor on the counter crackled with soft breathing. She dried her hands and noticed a folded paper tucked under the edge of the refrigerator magnet, a fresh set of feeding notes in Vanessa's handwriting. Every line was exact. Times, ounces, temperature, the reminder to discard leftovers. Nothing unusual, and yet something about the insistence unsettled her. When the clock struck 2, Eli woke, crying. She warmed a bottle and carried it upstairs. He drank slowly, his eyelids heavy again. "You've got to stay awake a little, sweetheart," she whispered, rocking him gently. "We'll go out later and watch the leaves fall." But within minutes, he was asleep again. His breathing sounded too deep, too heavy. She touched his cheek, cool and damp. A faint worry rippled through her, but she brushed it aside. Children had off days. That was what the doctor always said. Still, the unease clung to her like a shadow. Later, in the hallway, she caught sight of Vanessa standing near the nursery door, speaking quietly into her phone. "No, he won't be a problem much longer," Vanessa said, her voice smooth, almost bored. "I'll handle it. Just follow the schedule." Marianne froze. The words hung in the air like frost. When Vanessa turned, her expression was perfectly composed. "Mrs. Cole," she said, tucking her phone away. "Everything all right?" Marianne forced a polite nod. "Just checking on Eli." "And good," Vanessa replied, smiling faintly. "He's lucky to have someone so devoted. Keep up the good work." She walked away, perfume lingering behind her. Marianne stood there long after the sound of her heels faded, her heart thudding in her chest. No, she couldn't have meant the boy, she thought. She must have been talking about something else, some business matter, maybe. Still, unease kept her awake that night. The house slept, wrapped in silence, except for the faint hum of the refrigerator. Marianne sat by the kitchen window, watching the moonlight spill over the maple trees. The wind rattled the glass, and she found herself whispering an old prayer for protection. Sometime after midnight, she rose to check the nursery once more. Eli lay curled on his side, his small hands tucked under his cheek. The nightlight painted soft halos on the walls. Satisfied he was safe, she turned to leave and paused. From the kitchen below came the faintest sound, glass tapping glass, like a bottle being set down. Then, a whisper, a low, indistinct murmur that drifted through the stairwell. Marianne's breath caught. She stood still, listening. The clock ticked once, twice. The sound came again, quiet, but unmistakable. The clink of glass and a voice too soft to understand. Her hand found the banister. The hallway was pale with moonlight. For a moment, she thought of her daughter's face, of how fear always began this way. A small sound that grew into something larger. She hesitated only a heartbeat before stepping down the first stair, her pulse hammering in her ears. That night, she heard the faint rattle of glass from the kitchen and someone whispering near the baby bottles. Morning sunlight crept through the curtains of the Hale kitchen, laying long stripes across the polished counters. The smell of fresh coffee filled the air, yet Marianne hardly noticed it. She'd barely slept. All night, that whispering sound from the kitchen echoed in her mind like a tune she couldn't forget. When she came downstairs, the house was already awake. Vanessa sat at the marble island in a white cashmere robe, scrolling through her phone. A single vase of roses stood beside her breakfast plate, untouched toast, a perfect image of composure. "Good morning, Mrs. Cole," Vanessa said without looking up. "Eli's still asleep. Let's let him rest, shall we?" "Yes, ma'am." Marianne's voice came out softer than she intended. She moved to the sink, rolling up her sleeves. The baby bottle sat drying upside down, clean and gleaming. Everything looked ordinary. Too ordinary. Kendra Blake entered a few minutes later, cheerful in scrubs the color of spring water. "Morning, everyone," she chirped, setting her medical bag on the counter. "Little man's schedule looks perfect. You really are organized, Mrs. Hale." Vanessa smiled thinly. "I like things done properly." Marianne turned her back, pretending to arrange the dish towels, but her ears caught every word. When Vanessa and Kendra left the room to talk upstairs, she opened one of the cabinet doors, expecting nothing. Then she froze. Behind the stack of formula cans sat a small silver vial. No label, just a glint of glass catching the morning light. She reached for it, then pulled her hand back, heart racing. Eli's cry echoed from the baby monitor. She hurried to the nursery. The boy's cheeks were pale, his eyelids heavy again. There, sweetheart," she soothed, lifting him gently. "We'll get some breakfast, huh?" He didn't smile, didn't giggle. He just leaned his head against her shoulder with a tired sigh. Back in the kitchen, Kendra was mixing a new bottle. She moved quickly, measuring, shaking, testing the temperature on her wrist. "He's lucky to have this routine," Kendra said, noticing Marianne watching. "It keeps him settled. Mrs. Hale's very precise." Marianne nodded, forcing a small smile. "Yes, she is." And as Kendra left with the bottle, Marianne caught a faint chemical smell in the air, sweet but sharp. She turned, sniffed again, and it was gone. Later that afternoon, when Vanessa went out for a manicure and Kendra napped in the guest room, Marianne walked to the back porch with a mug of tea. The autumn wind carried the sound of church bells from town. She tried to let it calm her, but unease clung to her like the chill in the air. She thought of her late husband, of the daughter she'd lost. She remembered the hospital room, the stillness, the doctor saying it had been too late to notice the signs. "I should have seen it sooner." The memory still stung after all these years. A voice startled her. "Pretty view, huh?" She turned to see Travis, the housekeeper's assistant, wiping his hands on a towel. "Almost makes you forget the world's gone crazy," he said with a grin. Marianne smiled faintly. "Almost." He nodded toward the woods. "They say Coyote's been spotted again." "Don't let the kid wander out there." "I won't," she said. "Thanks, Travis." As he left, she looked back at the house. The windows reflected the golden light, flawless and cold. She wondered what secrets such a house could keep. Evening brought a soft rain, tapping gently against the glass. Marianne prepared Eli's dinner while Kendra took a phone call in the hall. The nurse's voice was low, tense, like someone explaining too much. When Kendra hung up, she smiled as if nothing had happened. "Long day," she said, reaching for the next bottle. "Can't wait for the weekend." Marianne's hands trembled as she wiped the counter. "You'll be here through Sunday, then?" "Of course." Kendra's tone was light, but her eyes flicked away. When the bottle was ready, Marianne took it upstairs herself. Eli lay half asleep, the rain's rhythm soothing him. She sat beside his bed until he finished drinking, then tucked him under a soft blanket printed with tiny bears. As she turned off the lamp, a flicker of light caught her eye, a reflection on the half-empty bottle. The liquid shimmered strangely in the dim glow, thinner than she remembered. She tilted it, and the sound was wrong, too watery. Downstairs, Vanessa's laughter rang faintly through the hall, mingled with the clink of glass and the pop of a cork. Marianne's heart thudded. Something was wrong. She could feel it in her bones. Night fell early that evening. The rain had turned to mist, wrapping the Hale mansion in a soft, eerie hush. Marianne moved quietly through the kitchen, tidying up after dinner. The sink glimmered under the warm light, and the baby bottle stood in neat rows beside the stove. Everything looked perfect, too perfect. She hesitated before taking one of the bottles from the rack. Tilting it in her hand, she studied the liquid inside. It looked thinner than milk should be, almost translucent. She uncapped it, sniffed. A faint chemical trace, something sweet and medicinal, pricked at her nose. Her heart thumped. She placed the bottle back carefully and turned toward the pantry. The small silver vial was gone. For a moment, she just stood there, staring at the empty shelf, her pulse pounding in her ears. Then she heard soft footsteps behind her. "Mrs. Cole," Vanessa said, her voice smooth as satin. "Still working this late?" Marianne forced a calm breath. "Just cleaning up, ma'am, making sure everything's ready for tomorrow." Vanessa smiled, stepping closer, her perfume sharp and cold. "You're very devoted. That's rare these days." She brushed a speck of dust from the counter. "People talk about loyalty, but they never mean it." "I try to do what's right for the child," Marianne said quietly. Vanessa's gaze flicked up. "Of course you do." Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "And you'll keep doing it, won't you?" The air felt suddenly heavy. Marianne nodded, unable to trust her voice. When Vanessa finally left the kitchen, the sound of her heels faded down the hall like a slow metronome. Marianne leaned against the counter, her hands trembling. What was she implying? Later, after putting Eli to bed, Marianne wrapped a shawl around her shoulders and stepped out onto the back porch. The night air smelled of rain and maple bark. Down the hill, the lights of Ash Grove shimmered through the fog like tiny lanterns. She sipped her tea and tried to quiet her thoughts, but they kept circling back to that bottle, that smell, that whisper from the night before. Her conscience warred with her fear. If she was wrong, she could lose her job, maybe even face a lawsuit. But if she was right, "Dear Lord," she whispered, clutching the mug, "don't let me be too late again." Back inside, she checked on Eli once more. The boy stirred slightly, his breath shallow but steady. She tucked the blanket closer around him, smoothing his hair as the wind rattled the window pane. Heading downstairs, she passed the study and saw a faint line of light under the door. Vanessa's voice drifted out low, calm, measured. "Yes, I said it's working. He's weaker, sleeps longer. By next week, it should be done." Marianne froze mid-step. Her blood turned to ice. Vanessa's tone sharpened. "Just make sure the dosage is right this time. I don't want any mistakes." The sound of a chair scraping echoed, followed by the soft click of the phone being set down. Marianne stepped back, her hand pressed over her mouth. She felt dizzy, her vision swimming. The truth she'd tried not to see now blazed in front of her. She crept away, her shoes silent on the carpet, her breath unsteady. Upstairs, she paused by Eli's door. The child slept peacefully, unaware of the darkness gathering around him. Marianne's decision settled like a stone in her chest. Tomorrow, she would find proof, whatever it took. That evening, she saw Vanessa locking a small silver vial in a drawer near the pantry. When Marianne bent to pick up Eli's toy truck, she spotted a droplet of cloudy liquid beneath the counter and a faint chemical smell she couldn't place. The next morning dawned gray and cold. Mist clung to the fields around Ash Grove, and the smell of damp earth seeped into the air. Marianne stood at the bus stop on Main Street, her hands tight around a brown paper bag. Inside was the bottle she'd hidden the night before Eli's leftover milk. She hadn't slept. Each time she closed her eyes, she saw that vial gleaming in Vanessa's hand, heard the sound of her calm, calculating voice. It had been years since Marianne had felt real fear, but now it lived in her chest like a second heartbeat. The hospital sat on the edge of town, a small brick building with a white steeple-shaped clock tower that chimed every hour. Her son Luke worked there as a lab technician, steady job, steady man, though too practical for his mother's liking. When Marianne arrived, Luke was hunched over a computer, coffee in one hand, tired eyes squinting at a spreadsheet. "Mom," he said, surprised but smiling. "You don't usually come by unless there's pie involved." I need your help," she said softly, glancing around. "It's important." Luke set his mug down. "Okay, what's going on?" She opened the paper bag and slid the small baby bottle across the desk. "Can you test this?" He frowned. "For what?" "I'm not sure," she admitted. "Something feels wrong. The baby I care for, he's been so weak lately. I think there's something in his milk." Luke stared at her, the humor gone from his face. "Mom, you can't just accuse people like that." "I'm not accusing," she said quickly. "I just need to know. If it's nothing, I'll sleep better. Please, Luke." "For me," he sighed, running a hand through his hair. "All right, I'll run it after my shift tonight. Just don't get your hopes up for anything dramatic. It's probably nothing." "Probably," she echoed, but the word didn't comfort her. As she left the hospital, the wind picked up, scattering yellow leaves across the sidewalk. She clutched her coat and whispered a prayer under her breath. "Please, let me be wrong." Back at the Hale estate, Vanessa was in the living room arranging a bouquet. "Ah, Mrs. Cole," she said, smiling thinly. "How was your morning errand?" Marianne froze. "Errand? I saw you leave earlier. I do hope it wasn't anything troublesome." "No, ma'am. Just needed to pick up my prescription." Vanessa studied her for a moment longer, then returned to the roses. "Good. I like knowing everything in this house is under control." Her voice was light, but Marianne felt the chill beneath it. She spent the rest of the day watching Eli closely. He played quietly, his movements slower than before. When she offered him a sip of water, he only shook his head. His small hand reached for hers instead, resting there, fragile and trusting. That evening, when Gregory returned from work, he barely noticed the boy's weakness. He kissed Vanessa on the cheek, murmured something about the quarterly report, and disappeared into his study. Marianne stood in the doorway, her frustration boiling quietly beneath her calm. How could a father not see? How could he not sense his own child fading before his eyes? Eli began coughing a small, dry sound. Marianne picked him up, rubbing his back. Vanessa appeared almost instantly, concern painted on her perfect face. "Oh, poor thing," she cooed. "He's always so sensitive. Maybe he's catching a little cold." "Maybe," Marianne said, her gaze lingering on Vanessa's immaculate hands as they adjusted the boy's blanket. Vanessa smiled, but her eyes gleamed with something else, something unreadable. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, the phone rang softly in Marianne's small apartment above the garage. It was Luke. "Mom," he said, his voice tight. "I ran that sample." Marianne sat up straight. "And?" There was a long pause. Then Luke whispered, "It's not just watered down. There's diphenhydramine in it." Marianne's throat went dry. "What is that?" "An antihistamine," he said. "Common in sleep medicine. In small doses, it can knock you out, especially a child." "Oh." Her hands trembled as she held the receiver. "Oh, dear Lord." "Mom, are you sure this is safe? You can't confront them alone." "I won't," she said quietly, though she didn't believe herself. "Thank you, Luke. You've done more than you know." She hung up and sat in the dark, the hum of the refrigerator the only sound. The truth pressed down on her like a weight. Down the hill, the town lights twinkled like stars fallen to earth, and Marianne realized her life had changed forever. By morning, the mist over Ash Grove had thickened into a pale fog. Marianne brewed coffee she couldn't taste, waiting for the sun to climb above the maple trees. Her mind kept circling the call from Luke, the words echoing like a warning. "It's laced with diphenhydramine." She hadn't told anyone, not yet. The truth felt too heavy, too dangerous to speak out loud. When she entered the nursery, Eli was still asleep, his tiny chest rising and falling too slowly for comfort. She bent down, brushed his hair back, and whispered, "You're safe, sweetheart. I promise you're safe." Downstairs, the house smelled faintly of roses and bleach. Vanessa was already at the dining table, scrolling through her phone, a plate of untouched fruit beside her. "Good morning, Mrs. Cole," she said smoothly. "I trust you slept well?" Marianne forced a polite smile. "As well as one can in a storm." Vanessa glanced up, her eyes narrowing slightly. "Storm? I didn't hear a thing." You wouldn't have," Marianne replied softly. It was quiet. The nurse, Kendra, came in soon after, cheerful but tense, her movements brisk. She greeted Vanessa first, then turned to Marianne. "I'll handle breakfast for Eli today, Mrs. Cole. You deserve a break." Marianne hesitated. "That's kind of you, but I'd like to feed him myself." Kendra's smile faltered for a moment before she handed over the bottle. "Suit yourself." As she took it, Marianne noticed the faint cloudiness in the milk again. Her stomach clenched. She waited until Kendra left the room, then poured a little of the mixture onto a napkin. It soaked through quickly, leaving behind an oily ring. Something in her snapped the quiet patience she had carried all these weeks broke. She cleaned the bottle, prepared a new one with fresh formula from a sealed can, and brought it upstairs. Eli drank slowly, then opened his eyes long enough to give her a weak smile. "Mimi," he murmured. Her throat tightened. "Yes, my darling. Mimi's here." That evening, when Gregory returned from work, the house felt colder. Vanessa met him at the door, all charm and perfume, but Marianne saw the shadows under his eyes. "Everything all right, sir?" she asked. "Just long hours," he said. Vanessa tells me Eli's been fussy. He's been tired, sir. Sleeping more than usual. And Gregory nodded absently and moved on. He never really heard her. Not yet. After dinner, Vanessa retreated to her study. Marianne followed quietly a few minutes later, her pulse quickening. The door was ajar. Inside, Vanessa was locking a small silver vial into the top drawer of the mahogany desk. She turned suddenly, catching Marianne's reflection in the glass. "Something you need, Mrs. Cole?" Marianne's breath caught. "Just checking if you'd like tea, ma'am." "Oh, tea?" Vanessa's smile was thin. "No, thank you. But I appreciate your attentiveness." Their eyes met for a long moment before Marianne stepped back into the hall, her hands shaking. The air felt charged, thick with something she couldn't name. She needed proof, real proof. Later, while picking up toys in the kitchen, she bent to retrieve Eli's small red truck from beneath the counter. That's when she saw it, a droplet of cloudy liquid glistening on the tile, faintly sticky, carrying that same strange chemical scent. She knelt, heart pounding, and whispered, "Dear God, what are they doing to him?" Her fear deepened into resolve. Tomorrow she would act. She didn't yet know how, but she could no longer pretend not to see. In the distance, thunder rolled over the mountains, and the lights in the kitchen flickered as if the house itself were holding its breath. That night, Marianne forced herself to stay awake. Every creak of the floor, every sigh of wind felt like a warning. Somewhere down the hall, a door closed softly. She rose, wrapped her shawl tighter, and stood by the window, watching the storm build over Ash Grove. She whispered into the dark, "Hold on, little one. Just hold on." Even before dawn, the Hale mansion stood awake. Rain fell in silver sheets over the glass terrace, and thunder murmured far beyond the hills. Marianne moved quietly through the kitchen, trying to calm her thoughts. She had promised herself that today she would act, but how? Who would believe a housekeeper accusing the wife of a man like Gregory Hale? She brewed coffee and set the kettle on low heat. Every sound in the empty kitchen felt too loud. A clap of thunder made her flinch. She turned, startled, and found Vanessa standing in the doorway, perfectly dressed even at 6 in the morning. "Early start, Mrs. Cole?" Vanessa asked, her tone light. "You never rest, do you?" Marianne steadied herself. "I couldn't sleep. I wanted to prepare Eli's breakfast early." Vanessa smiled faintly. "That won't be necessary. I'll handle his meal today. You can take a little break." "That's kind of you," Marianne replied carefully. "But I prefer to keep to the routine." Vanessa's gaze lingered on her face, searching. Then she stepped closer, the air filling with her perfume. "You've been with us a long time, haven't you? 4 years?" "Almost 5, Marianne said. "And I've always valued loyalty." Vanessa's voice softened, but her eyes were sharp. "It's what keeps a house like this running smoothly. Don't you agree?" Marianne's fingers tightened around the coffee mug. "Yes, ma'am. Loyalty matters." Vanessa gave a slow, graceful nod. "Good. Then let's keep it that way." For the rest of the morning, Marianne felt Vanessa's presence like a shadow at her back. Every time she entered a room, Vanessa seemed to appear seconds later, smiling, polite, asking idle questions. "Did you sleep well? Did you go into town yesterday? Have you heard from your son?" It was no longer curiosity. It was surveillance. By afternoon, the rain had stopped. A weak light filtered through the kitchen window as Marianne wiped down the counters. Gregory's voice drifted in from the study. He was on the phone, discussing the upcoming Maple Harvest Festival. His tone was brisk but tired, a man trying to sound in control. Vanessa appeared again, this time holding a silver tray. "Mrs. Cole, could you come to the study for a moment? Mr. Hale would like to speak with you." Marianne followed her down the hall, every nerve on edge. Gregory sat behind his desk, flipping through papers. "Ah, Marianne," he said without looking up. "I just wanted to thank you for your dedication. Vanessa tells me you've been doing wonders with Eli's schedule." Marianne managed to smile. "He's a sweet boy, sir. I'm happy to help." "Good, good." He finally looked up, his eyes tired. "You've been with us so long. You're practically family." Vanessa's laugh was soft but sharp. "Practically," she said. Marianne felt her stomach twist. After the meeting, Vanessa asked her to step into the sitting room. The moment the door closed, the woman's demeanor changed. "Mrs. Cole," Vanessa said, lowering her voice, You seem uneasy lately. Is something troubling you? Marianne's pulse quickened. No, ma'am. Everything's fine. Vanessa studied her, then crossed to the side table. She opened a drawer and took out a white envelope. You've worked hard all these years, she said, laying it on the table between them. Consider this a small token of appreciation. Marianne glanced down inside the half-open flap. She saw a stack of bills. More money than she made in months. I can't accept this, she whispered. Vanessa tilted her head. Of course you can. It's just gratitude. I don't need gratitude, Marianne said, her voice trembling now. I only want what's best for Eli. Vanessa's expression cooled. Then take the money and keep quiet about things you don't understand. Oh, a silence fell between them, broken only by the sound of rain returning against the windows. Marianne felt the air thin. I don't know what you mean. Oh, I think you do, Vanessa said softly. It would be a shame if misunderstandings cost you your position, or worse, your peace. For a moment, neither woman moved. The grandfather clock in the hall struck 3, each chime slicing through the tension. Then Gregory's voice called from the other room. Vanessa, are you ready? We're running late for the festival meeting. Vanessa straightened instantly, her smile returning like a mask. Coming, dear. She turned to Marianne, her tone once again sweet. Thank you for your time, Mrs. Cole. Do think about my offer. She left the room, the scent of roses and fear lingering in her wake. Marianne stood there long after the footsteps faded, her hands cold, the envelope still on the table like a trap waiting to be sprung. She knew now that Vanessa understood more than she let on, and that silence might no longer keep her safe. The house fell quiet after Gregory and Vanessa drove away. Rain whispered against the windows, steady and soft, as if the storm itself were listening. Marianne stayed in the sitting room, the envelope still untouched on the table. The longer she looked at it, the more wrong it felt, like something poisonous hidden inside. Finally, she slipped it back into the drawer and closed it gently. When she turned, she found Kendra standing by the doorway, pale and uneasy. Mrs. Cole, she said, her voice low. Is everything all right? You look shaken. Marianne tried to smile. I'm fine, dear. Just a long morning. But Kendra hesitated. Vanessa said I shouldn't talk to you much anymore. I don't understand why. Marianne's heart gave a small twist. It's nothing you need to worry about. Just be careful, all right? The younger woman nodded, but there was fear in her eyes. She turned away quickly, leaving Marianne alone again. By evening, the sky cleared, and the lights of Ash Grove shimmered far below. Gregory hadn't returned yet. Vanessa came home first, carrying the faint smell of perfume and rain. She walked into the kitchen as if she owned not just the house, but the air itself. Still here? She asked lightly. You must love this job more than I thought. Marianne kept her back to her. Someone has to make sure things stay in order. Vanessa set her purse on the counter, her movement slow, deliberate. Order is important. So is discretion. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. You're a smart woman, Mrs. Cole. You've seen enough of life to know when to speak and when not to. Marianne felt the cold rise through her chest. Are you threatening me? Threatening? Vanessa laughed softly. Of course not. I'm simply reminding you of boundaries. She leaned in until Marianne could see her reflection in those dark, polished eyes. Curiosity can be dangerous in houses like this. Before Marianne could answer, the door opened and Gregory entered, shaking rain from his coat. Evening, everyone, he said with a tired smile. Vanessa, thank you for setting up tomorrow's charity event. You've outdone yourself again. Vanessa turned to him, radiant and composed. Just doing my part, darling. You know how I love community work. Mrs. Cole, Gregory added, please make sure Eli's things are ready for tomorrow's festival. I want him to look his best. Yes, sir, Marianne said quietly. As soon as he left the room, Vanessa's voice dropped again, almost to a whisper. Be careful what you stir, dear. Vermont's full of old wells, and some secrets sink deep. The words settled in the air like smoke. Vanessa brushed past her, the soft rustle of silk following her out of the kitchen. Later that night, Marianne sat by her small window above the garage, staring out at the yard. The moonlight spilled over the wet grass, turning every puddle silver. She was too tired to pray, too tense to rest. The house below was silent again, as if nothing had happened. Then she noticed something strange on her porch, a small wooden box. She stepped outside, the air sharp and cold against her face. The box was damp, tied with a thin white ribbon. When she opened it, a faint sweet odor rose up, mixed with something metallic. Inside lay a tiny sparrow, its wings folded neatly, its beak stained with what looked like milk. Marianne's breath caught in her throat. She stumbled back, the box falling from her hands. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote howled, its cry echoing across the hills. The sound carried through the still night, lonely and haunting. Marianne looked toward the house. Every window was dark except one, the faint golden glow of Vanessa's study. It flickered once, then went out. She stood there a long time, the chill creeping into her bones. The message was clear now. This wasn't a warning anymore. It was a promise. Morning came pale and uneasy. The rain had stopped, leaving the streets of Ash Grove slick with silver puddles. Marianne walked into town wrapped in her wool coat, her steps careful, almost secretive. The weight of the night before the dead sparrow, the soft threat in Vanessa's voice followed her like a shadow. She needed help, someone she could trust. At Ash Grove Cafe, the bell over the door jingled softly. The place smelled of maple syrup and strong coffee. Locals chatted about the coming Maple Harvest Festival, their laughter, light, and unaware of the storm gathering on the hill. Marianne slipped into a booth near the window. Moments later, Luke appeared, still in his hospital scrubs, holding 2 steaming cups. "Mom," he said, sitting across from her, "you look exhausted." "I am," she admitted, voice trembling. "Luke, I'm in over my head. It's worse than we thought." He frowned, lowering his voice. "You have proof?" Marianne took a deep breath and slid a small paper napkin across the table. On it was a name she had scrawled, in shaky handwriting. "Kendra Blake." "She knows something," Marianne said. "The nurse. She's been helping Vanessa, maybe without realizing it." Luke studied her face. "Mom, if you're right, this is dangerous. You can't handle this alone." "I'm not alone anymore," she said. "You'll help me." He hesitated, then nodded. "Always." Back at the estate, the air was thick and humid, a strange stillness before another storm. Marianne found Kendra in the garden, pretending to prune flowers but trembling slightly. The young nurse jumped when she heard her voice. "Kendra," Marianne said gently, "we need to talk." Kendra's shears clattered to the ground. "About what?" "About the bottles. About Mrs. Hale." Kendra's lips parted, but no sound came. She looked around nervously, as if the roses themselves might be listening. "You don't understand," she whispered. "I didn't know at first. She said it was just vitamins to help the boy sleep. She said his heart was weak." Marianne stepped closer, her tone calm but firm. "And you believed her?" Kendra's eyes filled with tears. "I wanted to. She paid me well. I didn't ask questions. But then I saw the doses increasing." The wind stirred, scattering rose petals across the path. Marianne reached out, her voice softening. "You can still do the right thing. You can help stop her." Kendra wiped her eyes and nodded quickly. "I kept something. I recorded our calls, just in case. I couldn't sleep at night thinking about what might happen to that boy." She pulled a small flash drive from her pocket. "Everything's on here, her voice, her messages." Marianne stared at it, relief flooding through her. "Kendra, this could save him. This could save all of us." But Kendra's expression turned frightened. "You don't understand. She suspects I talked to you. She said if I ever betrayed her." A door slammed inside the house, making them both jump. "Hide it," Marianne said. "I'll keep it safe." Kendra nodded, pressing the drive into her hand. "Please, don't tell anyone I gave it to you." Marianne tucked it deep into her coat pocket and led the young woman back inside, their steps quick and silent. She could feel the flash drive burning like a secret against her chest. By the time evening fell, the house seemed darker than usual. Vanessa was nowhere to be seen, and Gregory hadn't come home yet. The rain started again, steady and cold. Marianne sat by the small desk in her room above the garage, staring at the flash drive. Her heart pounded as she imagined what it held. Proof. Undeniable proof. She reached for the phone, ready to call Luke, but the line was dead. The lights flickered once, then steadied. Somewhere below, a door creaked open. Her breath caught. Someone was in the house. Marianne froze, the phone still in her hand. The sound came again, slow, careful steps crossing the kitchen below. She turned off the lamp, letting the faint glow of the rain through the window guide her. For a moment, she thought it might be Gregory returning late, but then she heard the soft click of a drawer opening, the one near the pantry. Her pulse quickened. That was where Vanessa kept the vial. She pressed herself against the wall, listening. The footsteps moved across the tile floor, then stopped. Silence stretched, long and tense, until the refrigerator hummed and the clock ticked twice. Marianne gathered her courage and crept downstairs. The hallway lights were off. Only the faint shimmer from the porch filtered in. As she reached the kitchen, she saw the pantry door ajar, the faint smell of perfume drifting through. "Mrs. Cole," Vanessa's voice said from the shadows, calm and cutting. "You're still awake." Marianne turned slowly. "I heard something. I thought someone had broken in." Vanessa stepped forward, her smile sharp enough to slice the air. "Someone did," she said. "Only it wasn't a stranger." She gestured toward the counter. The drawer near the stove was open, papers scattered across the floor. "You've been snooping," Vanessa said quietly. "That's not very polite." Marianne's heart hammered. "I don't know what you're talking about." Vanessa tilted her head, studying her. "I don't like being lied to, especially not in my own house." She reached for the drawer and pulled out a handful of Money-Crisp bills, folded neatly. "I gave you a gift, Mrs. Cole. Yet here you are, pretending to be some kind of hero." "I don't want your money," Marianne said. "No?" Vanessa's voice rose slightly, still smooth, but dangerous. "Then what do you want? To destroy me? To take him away?" "I just want the boy safe," Marianne said, her voice trembling but firm. Vanessa laughed softly, stepping closer. "Safe? You think you can protect him from me? You're just a tired old woman clinging to a dead child's memory." The words hit like a slap. Marianne felt her knees weaken, but she stood her ground. "You have no right." "Don't test me," Vanessa interrupted. "You don't know the kind of people I can call." The threat hung between them, cold and real. Vanessa smoothed her hair, her smile returning. "You'll come to your senses, Mrs. Cole. You'll realize it's better to stay quiet." She turned to leave, her heels clicking softly on the tile. When the front door finally closed behind her, Marianne sank to the floor, shaking. She reached into her coat pocket. The flash drive was still there. Her one weapon, her proof. She needed to get it somewhere safe. But when she climbed the stairs back to her small room, her breath caught. The drawer of her desk was open. Papers were scattered across the floor, her purse overturned. The flash drive was gone. For a moment, the world tilted. Rain lashed against the windows. She searched the room, hands trembling, but it was useless. It had been taken. Downstairs, a car engine roared to life. Through the curtain, she saw Vanessa's taillights vanish into the darkness. Marianne pressed her palm to her chest, trying to steady her breath. "God help me," she whispered. "She knows." The thunder rolled low across the mountains, echoing through the valley. That night, the wind rattled every window in the Hale mansion. But Marianne didn't sleep. She sat in the dark beside the crib, one hand on Eli's tiny arm, feeling his warmth as if it were the only truth left in the world. Tomorrow she would try again because the child's heartbeat was the only thing that still gave her strength. The next morning broke bright and deceptively calm. Sunlight filtered through the maple leaves, painting the Hale driveway in gold. From the town below came the faint sound of fiddles and laughter. The annual Maple Harvest Festival had begun. Every year, the people of Ash Grove gathered downtown to celebrate the turning of the season, to dance, to sell homemade pies. But this year, for Marianne, it felt like a march toward judgment. She had spent the night without sleep, her mind racing between fear and determination. The flash drive was gone, but the truth wasn't. She still had her memory, Kendra's confession, and the marks of Vanessa's cruelty carved deep into her heart. By 9 o'clock, Gregory called from the foyer. "Mrs. Cole, are we ready?" "Vanessa wants Eli dressed for the parade." "Yes, sir," she answered, buttoning Eli's small plaid shirt. The boy smiled sleepily, his blonde curls shining in the morning light. He looked stronger that morning, less pale, more alive. Maybe the clean formula she'd prepared last night had helped. When she carried him downstairs, Vanessa was radiant in a red wool coat, her lipstick matching perfectly. "Isn't he handsome?" she said, holding Eli as if he were a trophy. "A real Hale." Marianne forced a polite nod. "He looks well today." "Of course he does," Vanessa replied smoothly. "A little discipline and the right care, that's all children need." Gregory approached, adjusting his tie. "Let's make it quick. I need to greet the mayor before the ceremony." They all drove down the hill together in the glossy black SUV. From the window, Marianne watched the town appear, banners fluttering, children running with caramel apples, the brass band warming up on the stage. Everything looked so normal, so heartbreakingly innocent. At the festival grounds, people waved to Gregory. He shook hands, smiled for photographs, said all the right words. Vanessa stayed close to him, her smile unwavering. But her eyes kept flicking toward Marianne, cold and watchful. Marianne stayed near the stroller, her hands trembling slightly. Then, through the crowd, she saw Kendra. The young nurse looked pale, her eyes darting nervously. She approached quietly, pretending to admire a row of maple candy stalls. "Mrs. Cole," Kendra whispered, her voice barely audible over the music. "She knows I gave you the drive." Marianne's heart sank. "It's gone. She took it." "I made another copy," Kendra said, slipping a folded note into Marianne's hand. "It's in the diaper bag. I couldn't let her win." Before Marianne could reply, a woman from the crowd called Kendra's name, and she turned away, vanishing among the festival booths. Marianne tucked the note into her sleeve, her heart pounding. Hope flickered again, faint but alive. As the parade began, Vanessa lifted Eli into her arms for a photograph. Flashbulbs popped. The boy squirmed, rubbing his eyes. Marianne stepped forward, uneasy. "He looks tired, ma'am. Maybe he should sit a while." Vanessa's smile froze. "Don't be ridiculous. He's fine." But he wasn't. Marianne saw it in the way his head tilted, the way his lips parted slightly, as if his breath couldn't quite keep up. Then it happened. Eli went limp. His small body sagged against Vanessa's shoulder. A hush rippled through the crowd. Someone gasped. Vanessa's expression faltered, her poise slipping for the first time. "Gregory!" she screamed. "He's fainted!" Marianne was already moving. She took the child from Vanessa's arms and laid him on the grass, pressing her ear to his chest. The world around her disappeared. No music, no shouts, just the terrifying silence between heartbeats. "Call an ambulance!" she shouted. Gregory froze, staring in disbelief. "What's happening?" "He's not breathing." Marianne's voice broke as she began chest compressions, her hands steady, her training from years ago returning instinctively. "Come on, baby! Come on!" The crowd circled. The brass band stopped playing. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Marianne's tears fell onto the boy's shirt as she whispered, "Don't you dare leave me too." And then one faint gasp. Eli's chest rose, then fell again. Another gasp, stronger this time. "He's breathing!" someone cried. The sound broke the spell. People began shouting, calling for paramedics. Gregory knelt beside them, shaking, his phone slipping from his hand. Vanessa stood frozen, her face pale as paper. For a moment, Marianne thought she saw fear not for the child, but for herself. Eli whimpered weakly, his fingers grasping at Marianne's collar. She gathered him into her arms, sobbing with relief. Around them, the sirens wailed closer, echoing across the hills like a final reckoning approaching. Sirens wailed as paramedics lifted Eli onto the stretcher. The crowd watched in stunned silence while Marianne knelt beside him, whispering prayers. Gregory followed, pale and shaking. Vanessa stood frozen, her perfect smile gone. As Marianne gathered Eli's blanket, a folded note slipped from the diaper bag. Inside was a second flash drive, and Kendra's message. "For justice. Keep it safe." When Gregory turned to his wife, his voice was cold. "What did you give him?" Vanessa's face twisted. "Nothing. He's always been sick." Marianne stepped forward, voice steady. "No, ma'am. You made him sick." People gasped. Vanessa's mask cracked. "You think they'll believe a servant?" "They'll believe your voice," Marianne said, holding up the flash drive. Gregory's breath caught. "Dear God." Before Vanessa could flee, the sheriff's car pulled up. Kendra pointed from the crowd. She did it. The sheriff moved fast, cuffing Vanessa as the townsfolk whispered. The maple banners fluttered in the cold wind as she screamed, "You'll regret this!" Mary Ann watched the ambulance pull away with Eli inside. For the first time in months, she felt the weight of fear begin to lift. The truth, at last, had a voice. Ash Grove Hospital sat quiet beneath the gray Vermont sky. Snow drifted softly against its windows, turning the world outside pale and still. Inside, the hum of machines and the faint smell of disinfectant filled the air. Mary Ann sat in the corner of the waiting room, still wearing her damp coat, hands wrapped around a cup of lukewarm coffee she hadn't touched. Her reflection in the glass looked older than she remembered, tired, lined with both fear and faith. Across the room, Gregory Hale stood by the window, his shoulders heavy, staring blankly at the snow. He hadn't spoken in nearly an hour. The sheriff's report lay on the table between them, the words black and final. Vanessa Hale charged with attempted murder, conspiracy, and child endangerment. When the sheriff returned, his voice was low but certain. "It's all here," he said, tapping the folder. "The recordings, the payments, the phone logs." Mrs. Hale confessed after a few hours of questioning. Gregory sank into a chair, eyes hollow. "Confessed." He rubbed his temples. "And I didn't see any of it. I let her near my son. I let her—" Mary Ann interrupted gently. "You saw what you wanted to see, sir. We all do that when our hearts are afraid of breaking again." He looked up at her, guilt swimming in his eyes. "You tried to warn me. I didn't listen." "You listened today," she said quietly. Silence stretched between them. A clock ticked faintly on the wall. Somewhere down the corridor, a child laughed, the sound small and distant, but it felt like hope. Gregory finally spoke again, his voice barely above a whisper. "You saved him. You saved both of us." Mary Ann shook her head. "No, that little boy saved me too. Reminded me what courage feels like." A nurse entered then, her face bright with cautious relief. "Mr. Hale, Mrs. Cole, the boy's awake. He's asking for you." They followed her down the corridor, the floor squeaking under their shoes. Mary Ann's heart pounded as they entered the small recovery room. Eli lay among white sheets, a tangle of blonde curls on the pillow. His face was pale but peaceful, the oxygen tube gone. When his eyes fluttered open, they found her first. "Mimi," he whispered, voice soft as breath. Mary Ann smiled through tears and knelt beside the bed, taking his hand. "I'm here, sweetheart." Gregory came closer, his throat tight. "Hey, buddy." Eli turned his small head toward the sound. "Daddy." The single word broke something inside him. Gregory bowed, pressing his forehead to his son's. For the first time since his wife's death, he let himself cry not for power, not for loss, but for grace. Mary Ann looked away to give them that space, her own tears spilling quietly. The rhythm of the boy's breathing steadied. The storm inside her heart began to ease. Outside the window, snow kept falling, soft and slow. Ash Grove seemed smaller from up here, humbler, more human. When she stepped into the hallway, Kendra waited near the nurse's station, her coat clutched tight around her shoulders. "They said she confessed," Kendra murmured. "Vanessa. She told them everything. The money, the plan, even the fake prescriptions." Mary Ann exhaled. "Then it's finally over." But Kendra's face stayed tense. "Not yet. Someone just tried to delete the backup files at the sheriff's office. They stopped it in time, but it means she wasn't working alone." Mary Ann's stomach turned. "Someone helped her?" Before Kendra could answer, a shout rang down the corridor. "Officer, room 2 amperes. She's gone." The words echoed like a gunshot. Mary Ann's blood ran cold. Vanessa had escaped. Chaos rippled through the hospital halls. Nurses hurried past, security radios crackling. Mary Ann's heart pounded as she caught the sheriff by the arm. "What do you mean she's gone?" "She slipped out during the shift change," he said grimly. A guard saw someone in a nurse's coat heading toward the parking lot. "We're locking down the exits." Gregory appeared moments later, pale and shaking. "Vanessa?" The sheriff nodded. "We think she had help." Mary Ann clutched her chest. "The boy Eli, please, don't leave him unguarded." "Already posted 2 officers outside his room," the sheriff said. "We'll find her." But Marianne didn't feel safe. She moved down the hall toward Eli's room, the fluorescent lights flickering overhead. Inside, the boy slept again, his small fingers clutching the corner of his blanket. Gregory stood at the foot of the bed, lost in thought. "She won't stop," Marianne whispered. "Not until she's taken everything." "Em?" Gregory turned to her, eyes red. "I was blind, Marianne. I let her into my home, into my son's life. Don't let guilt eat you," she said softly. "What matters now is protecting what's left." Outside, a nurse screamed. Both of them ran to the doorway. Through the glass of the opposite corridor, a figure in white moved fast toward the emergency exit. "It's her!" Marianne shouted. The sheriff and 2 deputies chased after the woman. For a second, Vanessa turned, her face pale under the harsh lights. No makeup now, no mask, just fury. Her voice echoed through the corridor. "You ruined everything." A deputy tackled her near the stairwell. The syringe she carried clattered across the tiles. The sheriff kicked it aside and pinned her arms. Vanessa screamed once, then went silent, eyes burning with hatred. Marianne stood frozen, breath shaking. Gregory stepped forward slowly. "Why Vanessa? He's just a child." Her voice cracked, almost a sob. "Because he wasn't mine, and you never were, either." They led her away. The hallway grew quiet again, the echo of her heels fading down the stairs. Back in the room, Marianne sat by Eli's bed. The boy stirred, whispering. "Mimi, I'm here, love," she said. "Everything's all right now." Gregory looked at her, voice low. "I don't deserve either of you," Marianne smiled faintly. "Then earn it day by day." Outside, dawn began to break over Ash Grove. The first light touched the window, soft and golden, carrying the scent of wet leaves. For the first time in years, Marianne felt peace take root in her chest, a quiet, steady kind of peace that came only after surviving the storm. Winter settled slowly over Ash Grove. The maple leaves were gone now, replaced by frost along the fences and a hush in the air that felt almost like forgiveness. The Hale mansion had grown quiet, stripped of its noise and glamour. The servants had left, reporters had moved on, and only 3 people remained: Gregory, his son Eli, and Marianne. A month had passed since Vanessa's arrest. The town still whispered about it, about how the famous Mrs. Hale had fallen from grace. But inside the house, on the hill, life was beginning again slowly, carefully, like a wounded bird learning to fly. Marianne stood in the kitchen, stirring oatmeal while the radio played a Christmas hymn. She glanced toward the window where Eli sat at the table, crayons scattered around him. He was stronger now, his cheeks pink again, his laughter returning in small bursts. "Look, Mimi," he said, holding up a drawing of Crooked Heart in red and blue. "For you." Her throat tightened. "It's beautiful, sweetheart." "Thank you." Gregory entered quietly, dressed in jeans and a flannel shirt instead of his usual suit. He looked almost like a different man, simpler, gentler. "Smells good," he said, smiling. "You're spoiling us again." "It's just breakfast," Marianne replied, but her eyes softened. He leaned on the counter, watching her. "You know, Eli talks about you constantly, says you make the best pancakes in Vermont." She laughed softly. "He exaggerates." "Not about that," Gregory said. Then his tone shifted, more serious. "I've been thinking, Marianne, about everything. The house, my life, how close I came to losing it all. I want to do right this time." She set down the spoon. "You already are." He shook his head. "No, I let greed and grief blind me. Vanessa's gone, but her poison lingers in this house. I can't erase it, but I can start over, and I want you to stay. Not as help, but as family." Marianne froze, the words sinking in. "Mr. Hale." "Gregory," he corrected softly. "Please, just Gregory." She looked away, blinking back tears. "I don't know what to say." "Say yes," he said, voice trembling. "Stay with us. Let's give Eli a real home." Eli, hearing his name, looked up from his drawing. "Are we going to be a family now?" Marianne knelt beside him, smiling through her tears. "We already are, my love." The boy threw his arms around her neck, giggling, his warmth filling the quiet kitchen. Gregory's eyes shone as he watched them, his heart lighter than it had been in years. Outside, snow began to fall, soft and steady. covering the scars of autumn. For the first time, the house on Maple Hill felt like a home not perfect, but alive. And in that moment, Marianne realized that some miracles didn't arrive in flashes of light or grand gestures. Sometimes, they came quietly through a child's laugh, a father's regret, and the steady, healing grace of love that refused to give up. By late afternoon, sunlight spilled through the frosted windows, catching the steam from Marianne's teapot and turning it gold. Eli napped on the couch under a knitted blanket, a soft hum of peace filling the living room. Gregory sat across from her, his hands wrapped around a mug of coffee, looking not like a CEO but simply a father trying to learn how to be present again. "I used to think success meant control," he said quietly. "Owning everything, deciding everything, but it just made me blind." Marianne smiled faintly. "Sometimes we lose our way before we can see where we belong." He nodded, gaze falling to the floor. "I've been thinking about setting up a trust in Carolina's name, a children's fund for hospital care. You and Luke could help manage it. You've both seen what true care looks like." Marianne's eyes widened. "You don't owe me anything." "I do," Gregory said simply. "You saved my son. You saved me." The room fell silent for a long while. The fire crackled softly. Outside, snow kept falling over Ash Grove, muffling the world in stillness. When Eli stirred, Marianne rose and tucked the blanket closer around him. The boy smiled in his sleep and whispered, "Mimi." Gregory watched, his voice breaking. "He loves you like a mother." She turned back, her eyes wet. "And I love him like my own." He stood, crossing the room until he was beside her. "Then don't ever leave. This house needs you. We need you." Marianne hesitated, the ache of her old life flickering in her chest, the years of loss, of drifting between homes, of silence after her daughter's death. For the first time, that ache didn't hurt. It simply eased. "All right," she whispered. "I'll stay." Gregory smiled, a small, honest smile that reached his eyes. He extended his hand. She took it. That evening, the three of them sat by the fire while the wind howled outside. The radio played an old Christmas hymn, and Eli sang along in his small, sleepy voice. Marianne looked around the room, the warm light, the laughter, the gentle rhythm of life returning, and felt something she hadn't felt in years: peace. When Gregory rose to stoke the fire, he glanced at her and said softly, "You know, for a long time, I thought my life ended the day my wife died. But maybe God sent you here to remind me that endings can also be beginnings." She smiled. "Maybe he did." Outside, the church bells of Ash Grove rang 6 times, their sound drifting over the snowy hills. Inside the Hale house, a child's laughter joined the echo, bright and clear. And in that moment, Marianne Cole knew she had come full circle from loss to love, from fear to faith, not as a servant, not as a witness, but as family. When winter blanketed Ash Grove, the world finally felt quiet again. Inside the Hale house, laughter returned Eli's giggles, the scent of oatmeal and coffee, and Marianne's gentle hum as she folded blankets by the fire. No grand speeches, no riches, just a family learning how to begin again. Gregory discovered that true wealth isn't counted in dollars, but in the warmth of those who wait for you at the table. And Marianne learned that healing comes not from forgetting the past, but from loving again despite it. The lesson is simple. Love and kindness can rewrite even the darkest chapters. Happiness grows not from what we own, but from who we hold close. Like a porch light glowing through the snow, one quiet act of goodness can guide someone home. So as you sit tonight with your tea or by the fire, think of Marianne and Eli, and remember, it's never too late to rebuild a home with love. If this story touched your heart, press 1 inch the comments. If not, or you'd like to share your thoughts, press 0, because every voice deserves to be heard.